Hi, my name is Ben Forbes, and I'm an AARP Colorado volunteer. AARP Colorado believes the best years begin at 50, and we're out to prove it with our program. The new 50 Plus, it's a mindset that says we're better than ever. As part of that get up and go attitude, we're hosting Wine Walk Wednesday, Summertime Wines. It's just another opportunity for AARP to encourage active adults to learn more, play more, and exceed all expectations. We can see and feel the trends. People 50 and over are more active, both physically and mentally, than ever before. They aren't slowing down, and in fact, they're preparing themselves to do more of the things that they love. So many older adults are exercising and eating right daily. They're taking time to learn new things, and they know the importance of life balance, making sure that leisure and fun are significant parts of their healthy lifestyle. In that lively spirit, we welcome you to enjoy our Wine Walk Wednesday webinar. While we hope you learn something new and exciting, we want you to enjoy yourself, relax, and most importantly, have some fun. Please note that we're offering a closed caption option this evening. If you're interested in that option, click on the last red button at the bottom. If you're watching on a recorded version, you may download the transcript under the Handouts tab, the fifth red button to the left that looks like paper. Please check out all that AARP Colorado has going on at aarp.org/co. We look forward to connecting with you. Now let's get started with Wine Walk Wednesdays. Here's our host for the evening, John Yu.
Thank you so much, Ben, and welcome everybody to Wine Walk Wednesdays. We have summertime wines. It's time to warm up and start exploring the palate for new wines and new different flavors. Lovely to see everybody across the country today, too. It's a great turnout. I'm very excited to see what we've got in store. So today we're going to be going through Provence and Rhone. We'll start off in France and move our way to the New World regions, mostly in Paso Robles, as well as like Australia and other regions. We'll explore the location, the terroir, the grapes, different styles and terminologies, and really see where and how it's affected the world. So right from the get-go, let's talk about how summertime, how it warms up in climate, and how it's affecting Europe. And with Europe, you're going to see extreme cold temperatures making people yearn for the warmth. Where do they go? Where do people want to go to see their vacation spent, their summertime? You're really looking at the Mediterranean. And you'll see on that map there, all throughout the Mediterranean, these little nooks and crannies of warm regions, all throughout Spain, Italy, France, Turkey, Greece, as well as Croatia. Now, where does this stem from? I like to look at the pilgrimage routes coming from Roman and medieval times. You're going to see these paths on this map here. They're exploring almost how all the pedestrian traveling really goes basically southwest, far from the north, out in like Denmark and Poland and northern parts of Germany, and really exploring these different paths, kind of the old pedestrian highways. And how does that affect these regions in terms of travel? Because again, they're doing it by foot. They're using different agriculture to guide the path, both like berries to help pilgrims nourishment while they're traveling, as well as affecting these vineyards and where we're guiding these vineyard locations. So as we go through, let's start with Provence. Now, Provence is kind of the gateway to France. Normally, we think of Bordeaux and Champagne, but really, Provence is the starting point of it all. And you'll see in the far southeast corner there where it's tucked in by Marseille and Nice, and it's right, basically, right along the Mediterranean coast. This area is kind of, it's called the Côte d'Azur, and we're going to explore kind of the origins of it, because for hundreds of years, actually thousands of years, this region has been growing and producing wine. It's the birthplace of this because the Romans first came across this area in the 600 BCE, and it's one of the first French territories to have been explored. And you'll see with that little pilgrimage route how both in Turin as well as right along the coast of Italy. These paths kind of converge into this area and really define some of the original Provence regions. So, a great classic medieval town being the town of Orgon, not Oregon, but Orgon, you're going to see this tight, almost cloister like village. It's all like limestone, cobblestone, really close and very tightly wound with the vegetation and the natural habitat, and not too built up. Right, it's a pretty low elevation, almost like in the valley village. So, as we explore this region, we're going to learn and explore some of these styles of wines. Primarily, this region's famous for rosés. And rosés are a really important part because they start to explore blending. Now, we haven't explored too much in the previous classes about blending, but this area is going to explore both red, white, and rosé, and how the rosé is kind of the culmination of the capability of red grapes and how to explore that. And I'd love to see you guys participating in what you're drinking today. New World, Old World. I see there's a couple wines from Paso and Sonoma. And really just give us your perspective of what you guys like to see and drink during the summertime. So, a great example of the coastal region, as you're going away from the, how would you say, like the tighter knit, colder areas of the inland region, getting out to the coast, you see how densely populated the region of, or the town of Nice is. This is a highly sought after region. This is something that everybody wants to be out here, and it's spread out all along the coast. You'll get a great example from this next town of Marseille, right? This city actually is very compact. Everybody has their boat. They're all ready to go and get ready for the summertime. And it's going to allow us to explore really the fundamentals of this area, which is the French Riviera. We also know it as the Côte d'Azur, but again, this is a hot spot for hundreds of years for summertime destination. And when we look at some of the regions of Rhone, we're going to start getting bolder, more complex wines. But Provence in general has some beautiful red wines and some really interesting white wines, but rosé is really captures the essence of Provence. So as we kind of wrap up this area, you're going to notice some of the towns along the Côte d'Azur coast. These are Monaco, Nice, Cannes, Saint-Tropez, and Marseille. These are ideal for beach weather and coastal region like swimming and sailing. So again, also too, I'd love to see your perspective of where you guys think of as beach time, because in the States we look at kind of the East Coast, the West Coast, as well as the South Coast. That's kind of where we're at. But for Europe, it's all right along the Mediterranean, right? And for us, we have a little bit more options. Are you traveling to San Diego or Florida, things like that? These are some of the areas that we've done in the past, and now give us some options to see what Europe is doing or has done. So again, favorite summertime wines. I'd love to see what you guys are pulling out. I see, let's see, a Corsican wine. I love that actually, because now you're starting to explore the Isles of Europe. You have Corsica, you also have like Ibiza, you also have Sicily. So these beautiful winemaking regions kind of isolated in that area, making very unique domestic wines. So let's see here. Ben, you were mentioning, do you mean rosé? Oh, well, yeah. So with the color of rosé too, that can be very interesting because Provence actually has a color grade. And we're going to look into that here, but picking some of these regions' quality of winemaking, rosé is one of the few wines where they're actually looking at the color of it. So In terms of everybody's favorites, my favorite actually is Picpoul de Panay. We'll get a little bit into that, and you'll see this iconic green, tall, lengthy bottle. It's really refreshing in style, and very crisp, almost like Verde or Sauvignon Blanc. Let's see. Let's see here. Susan, you've got a Chardonnay. Excellent choice. And again, this isn't to exclude any of the other regions that we've talked about, like Burgundy and sparkling regions like Champagne, as well as Sauvignon Blanc from Bordeaux. All beautiful summertime wines. This area, though, this we're looking at and exploring kind of the destination of summer wines, and also like the food that they're going with. Because I see James, you've got a Viognier as well, and we're going to get into the Viognier because I'd love to see your tasting notes for that, as well as a Riesling from Susie. Um, let's see, lighter Chard, and you know what? I love it because really with this style of wine, you have crisp Riesling and luscious Viogniers that are really exploring the palate and how it goes well with our food pairing choices, because we're looking at food more and more and more, and this region is really iconic with that. So another great example here in this next slide is Provence Rosé, which is one of my favorites. But it is you're going to have this great variety in color, almost like salmon, clear white, or even like a darker rose garnet like color. Gina, you were asking about the flavor profile of Picpoul de Panay. In general, you're going to have bright acidity, almost like green, crisp apples, a little bit of minerality, a little bit of like a stony, flinty character. But then you're also going to have like almost like green pear, and very like no oak. You're going to see now, especially in this style, a little bit more stainless steel. So it's all fruit, and it's just a refreshing wine. These wines tend to be, like $5-10. So super inexpensive summertime wines. Let's see here. So now, as we move a little bit farther north, we're going to start to explore Rhone. And with Rhone, we're going to start to see Viogniers, Marsanne Roussanne, as well as Syrah and Grenache. These are going to be the predominant grape varietals. But again, these are fantastic blending regions, and we'll go through a little bit of exploration on how they blend and why they blend. And looks like normal, you've got a Pinot Gris from Willamette. Mary Lou, you've got Sauvignon Blanc. Again, beautiful, crisp, refreshing. I like the Pinot Gris because it's got a little bit of minerality, needs a little bit of food, as well as easy drinking on its own. Sauvignon Blanc is beautiful because it's classic old world seafood pairing wines. And again, we're right on the coast this time, so we're going to explore a little bit of those food pairings. So as we move into this region of Rhone, a little farther north, we start off in southern Rhone, and you start to see this almost like drastic comparison compared to northern Rhone in terms of the region that, and basically the area in which it's growing. It's almost like funneling into this valley. And the reason why is because there's better growing region. Whereas when you go into northern Rhone, it's deep into the valley, almost on the hillside. And there's a couple obstacles in this region that make it very difficult and very unique for winemaking. It's quite the challenge. But in the northern part of Rhone, you're going to have the town of Lyon. And the southern part of Rhone, you're going to have an old town of Avignon. It straddles the river, the Rhone River, and you're going to see different quality, different expectations from the river and how it affects these wine regions. So as we start off in the south, we see this old Roman medieval style town, compact, closely knit cloisters of architecture and vegetation, and low to the ground. And that's important because as we start to see the vines are going to match that. It's a windy area. It's very hardy, tough area as we get farther and farther north. Now, as we go farther north to that northern town of Lyon, notice how that area just kind of widens out, and it's much, because it's on the river, it's got high congestion, very popular. But again, the town is very even. You know, you don't have great diversity in uh, like story levels. Everyone is pretty much on par, and that's because these what we call Mistral winds are going to really affect the area. But going into some of the origins of this area, we're going to see how these winding vineyards really carve out the land. Again, it gets steeper and steeper as we go farther north. And notice how each vine in this picture here is almost independent, right? It's not using a trellis system. They aren't using, a very regimented like growing pattern. This is based off of the terroir. It's really organized based off of how the land is guiding the vineyards. Let's see here. So as we get in, it looks like we've got a Barbera Rosé from Susan. That's awesome. I actually love some of these Italian rosés as well. Unless actually it's El Dorado, so California. Very cool. So now you're getting a bit warmer climate style. It's going to be riper and really capturing the juiciness of the Barbera. Let's see. Um, what else? It's and you know what too. As we get into the winemaking of this region, we're really going to see kind of old world, new world, right back to back, right? So in this photo, we're going to see Chapelle Hermitage. Now, in the 1300s, it's kind of a legend that this old knight from the Crusades, his name was Jasper de Sterenberg, and he was greatly wounded during the Crusades in the 1300s and became a hermit in this chapel. And by doing so, he basically lived off of the land, redeveloped this, but didn't really go out. Hence the name of this region being Hermitage, as well as Croz Hermitage, kind of in honor of this old crusader. Now, this region, again, being one of the oldest regions in France, has been growing and experimenting on wines for 2,600 years. It's great history, but at the same time, they were learning, they were exploring what grapes to make, what style of wine, how to grow your grapes, right? They weren't using trellising. There was nothing but taking the vine, sticking it in the ground, and letting it do its magic. And so you're going to see different, almost like architecture of the vine, right? It's what we consider in the New World gnarled vines. So as you see in this next picture here, oh, and Sarah said, did you mean orange colored wine or orange flavored wine? So orange colored wine more so, you're going to see almost in hue. The flavor with Provence Rosé is actually going to be the most concentration of flavor in a red grape without as much extraction of the color. Gives it great intensity of like orange. You're going to get almost like a strawberry, watermelon flavors, a lot of minerality, and sometimes it can be as light as bubblegum and as like dark and juicy as like strawberries, like sweet strawberries. I'm going to catch up here. Tracy said, I heard someone refer to orange wine in a movie and never heard of it. What is it and where is it produced? So orange wine in particular is actually a style that was made famous in the country of Georgia, Eastern Europe. And what they do is they allow for the wine to oxidize in amphoras and create this almost like resin-like imbuement of flavor. Makes very complex wine. But when we think of white wine being aged, that's really where some of the original aged white wine comes from. And it's kind of being brought back in style. You'll see this in the Finger Lakes in New York. I've even seen some producers in Argentina looking and making orange wine. So kind of a trend, modern trend that we're starting to see. Let's see here. Vanessa loving sparkling wine. Absolutely. For summertime, definitely one of my favorites is like, a beautiful, like rich cheese with champagne. Just that way it's juicy, oily, and then you've got this champagne to kind of clean up the palate and makes it a beautiful pairing. Let's see here. Oh, um, Sandra, I am currently on the terroir slide, if you can see that. Let me know if that is on concurrent for you. Let's see, David, you're drinking a Syrah Grenache Carignan blend from the Languedoc, and also your wife is drinking Provence Rosé. Perfect. And again, Languedoc Roussillon is a beautiful extension of this region. Continuing along the Mediterranean, we're going to see their style of well, Provence and Rhone kind of creating this universal language for both Languedoc and Roussillon as well as other regions. Let's see. Um, okay, so let's, in terms of the terroir, this is what we're looking at in terms of the weather. So we were describing how it's a very harsh environment. And notice how in the vines there, they're almost sideways. And that's because of what we call the Mistral winds. They're so intense. They go, like 50 to 100 miles an hour. And so it just blows everything over and is very detrimental to the vines. And so they have to grow the vines so that they're what we call head train. And it's basically independently growing. So as the weather gets harsher and harsher and the vines grow thicker and thicker, you have a much sturdier base. And this is kind of where we started creating what was called old vine. And the old vine style allowed for this great sturdy structure in the base, but also great concentration in the grape clusters as well. Yeah, actually, it does look like a bonsai tree. And if you look at kind of that little weather map up there, you'll notice the hot and the cold, right? So the hot is actually affecting more of the where is it? It's affecting more of like the Languedoc and Spain, whereas that cold wind is actually rushing through Burgundy or Champagne into Burgundy, Burgundy into Rhone and Provence. Now, as it gets out to Provence, it becomes less concentrated because it's not so much in the valley or valley river area. It starts to open up as you get into southern Rhone and Provence. And what time of the year it is affecting it. Actually, that's a great question, Joni. Um, you're going to see a lot of this happening kind of in transition. So as it goes from summer to autumn, the temperature changes. And this is imperative for these older vines because now they're starting to have grape clusters that they have to protect. And so when they're growing these grape clusters on the vine, it's actually the leaves, um, the canes that are protecting a lot of this. And so they're clipping and trimming according to how the grapes are growing. And it shelters it. Each individual vine is sheltering it instead of being able to be open. So you'll notice a lot of the trellising, modern day trellising, it's kind of where the actual canes are growing up and the grape clusters are at the base of it. So it allows for more sun exposure. This, on the other hand, allows for the vines to actually protect the grapes from heat, from wind, and a lot of the elements in the weather. Let's see. Um, Marion, you said, I no longer match the wine with the food. Prefer to drink what I enjoy regardless. And I'm right there with you. Sometimes it can create some really unique pairings, as well as allows you to explore the flavors because you're drinking something that you like and actually experimenting every time you're eating something new. And so that allows for you to really explore in a different way. Still a pairing in a sense, but now you're open to not just classical pairing, but actually allowing for those pairings to come across. Because if you find and stumble upon something new, it's kind of a beautiful moment that happened by accident, right? So next, as we go into these concentrated gnarled vines, you're going to see the soil around this region, in Rhone in particular, where these alluvial soils are almost like giant, what we call pudding stones or galettes, and they allow for great concentration of heat to be retained in the rock and allows for it to resonate when it's cool, because again, this is continental climate. So it can be hot in the daytime and cold at night. And so these stones allow for an environment and a terroir to keep the vines warm at night. So that way, when these vines are trained low to the ground, they're actually still warm, they're still protected. And notice in this picture here how those grape clusters are right in the thick of the bush, right? The leaves and the canes are really wrapped around it, protecting it. You can still see them, but they aren't as exposed as you would with a trellis style grape growing. Let's see here. Weather sets the mood for what to cook and eat, and then aligns what to drink for me. Sophia, I agree, and it's almost like more fun to experiment with that. As your palate changes, as the weather changes, it really allows for you to inadvertently grow and explore these wines. And there are a lot of grape varietals in this region, and we're going to see all the different styles here. But again, one last bit, you're noticing how, notice in this photo here, how the architecture and the land kind of blend into each other, right? And in the New World, especially like California, uh, we're trying to replicate this in style. Notice with that building there, I took a photo of this, or had a photo included because the stone architecture of this building is so dense, and it really kind of matches the galettes in the Rhone region. But at the same time, because of the Mistral winds, you have these little traditional French shutter windows protecting the actual window panes from the wind and from the harshness of the environment. Allows for cooler insulation as well, and allows for the wine region, these towns, these castle villages, to really blend in harmoniously with the environment. So as we go into northern versus southern Rhone, we were mentioning northern Rhone has that continental climate where it's hot in the summer, cooler in the kind of like mild winters, and the temperature changes just like it would in inland, right? Like you're going to have maybe 20 to 40-degree temperature swings during the daytime. Whereas in Provence, you think like San Diego, right? It's Mediterranean climate. It's almost perfect 70, 80 degrees all day long, but it's very consistent, low humidity, rainfall, and good quality sun. So again, let's get into some other questions here of what do you guys prefer for the summertime? Do you all like red wine, white wine, or rosé? In general, I have a feeling we all kind of gear towards white wine and rosé, and that can also include sparkling and maybe a particular style or region that you're fond of. But at the same time, what red wines do you like? We don't always say, hey, let's drink some red wines during the summertime, but I like to see what your preference is, because as we get into this warmer region, I always like to think of barbecue. Barbecue has its own element because it allows for you to have juicier, heartier food pairings with your grilling, like meats as well as vegetables. It's just a much more flavorful, concentrated food pairing. Looks like we've got Strictly Reds from Ida, and Joni's got Sancerre. All right, I like it. I like it. Let's see here. Ladonna's got red as well. So let's start with some reds, right? So in the northern Rhone, we have a little bit of white from Viognier, and you're going to have this unctuous, luscious white wine that's going to be great for the seafood pairing. You also have Syrah, kind of the king of this region. It's got this beautiful, peppery, jammy, leathery, almost like spicy tone to it. It can also have a lot of like cherry, blackberry, very concentrated flavors, and quite often used for blending because of that structure. It allows for a lot of alcohol in the grape itself or when fermenting, and it allows for great structure. You'll see this in Australia as well as California because they can make big wines, right? Ooh, we got a lot. Let's see. David, let's see. Prefer wine with our meals. We will drink all kinds of wine. I like it. I like it. Um, Sarah, I'm right there with you. In Greece, lounge chair and having a beautiful white wine. Um, let's see. When it's hot, Ben, you like to go with white wines, but in cool. Let's see, it can be cool even in the summer. And Pinot, and you know what? Pinot is a great option because if you feel that red wine that is too bold can be too hot in a sense, Pinot is a great option because it's a lighter red wine. It still can be refreshing, can even be chilled slightly, so that way you can enjoy it at almost like more refreshing and cooling down for the palate. I like it. I like it. So again, you have a couple sparkling wines in this region as well, influenced by Champagne, but again, they're using their native grapes of Marsanne Roussanne to create different cuvées and different blends for their sparkling wines. Now, as we go farther south, we're going to see Southern Rhone being Grenache driven. They're also more blended, whereas in Northern Rhone, they typically do what's called a field blend, and sometimes you can see like Marsanne Roussanne being blended with the Syrah. Happens in the field, and it's just kind of a natural and almost like a now almost a very strategic way of making the wine because you're having white grapes and red grapes creating almost a finesse with the red wines of Northern Rhone. Whereas in the Southern Rhone, these Grenache driven wines, as well as let's say like Syrah, Mourvedre, they're going to create this blend. And now we're starting to look into winemaking techniques because they're deliberately looking for a designed flavor. The blend is going to allow for the winemaker to create a certain profile and a certain style. With the white wines here, you're going to see Picpoul, you're going to have Grenache Blanc, Viognier, Bourbon. You'll still have what is it? Marsanne Roussanne, as well as a couple others. And Sarah, you're asking, is Grenache sweeter wine? Can be, just depends on that style of winemaking. Again, you're going to have the winemaker, they can create a dessert wine like Vin de Natural using these, like Grenache, even red Grenache. Whereas white wine, quite often they'll allow for the grape and the wine to ferment to dryness, and then they add back sugar into it depending on the style, so that way it allows for them to add back richness, a little bit of sweetness, but in general you're going to see very crisp, full body wines from this region. GSMs, David, you're mentioning, are awesome, and really where we're getting this style from is the Rhone region. Let's see. Also, Ben mentioning Beaujolais and Beaujolais Nouveau being a beautiful wine, summertime wine is actually a great option. Beaujolais in particular can be a lot lighter and fruitier in style. And as we continue too, here you're going to see a little bit of terminology in this region, mostly spoken. You won't see this on the bottle, but we'll talk about the assemblage because it's very important to understand the blending process for the wine. But at the same time, to know what the grapes or the encépagement of that blend. And so in this region, unlike, let's say, Bordeaux, where they might not always list the grape varietals, on the back of these bottles, you'll quite often see a blend because they take pride in having a different ratio. In the New World, you also see what's called like a Hermitage, right? And you also have what's the term? They're basically almost like copywriting certain blend ratios. It's become very popular to do. So that way it protects the winemaker from copycats, if you will, of their blends. Now, when we get back into Provence, going south, you're going to see 90% of these winemakers making rosé. And they're using Cinsault, Grenache, Mourvedre, and Syrah. And Mourvedre also very popular in towns like Bandol, where they're making single varietal Mourvedre, concentrated red wines. But for the most part, definitely rosé to give them different style, minerality, and fruit character. Let's see here. So Gina, you were mentioning I prefer Grenache from Syrah, or sorry, Grenache from Australia, and Grenache from Rhone in California, over Rhone in California. So yeah, absolutely. And you'll also see with Australia, they also blend different grapes in it, right? They might have a little bit of Cabernet, also a little bit of Syrah, making that not quite GSM style, but allows for the lightening of the intensity of these wines. Let's see. And Ben was saying Susie Red Zinfandel is a favorite. Yes, as we get into Paso, especially in Central Coast California, Zinfandel is kind of a great segue into this area. And that style is treated and grown just like Old Vine Zinfandel with Old Vine Syrah out in this region here. So, with a little bit of terminology from Provence, you're going to have two different styles of blending and making rosés. You have Sagny method, which is to bleed, right? It's a gentle pressing of red grapes to extract but not over macerate these grapes to create this beautiful salmon hue. And they actually match the color to be a very specific shade. If it's too dark, it's it's gone. If it's too light, they add a little bit more maceration, a little bit more extraction from the skins. Whereas other regions in the world use what's called direct press, and what they'll do is that they well, and you'll also see this with rosé from Provence, where they design the wine and the rosé specifically as um, the they're designing and growing the grape specifically for rosé instead of it being a byproduct in the Sagny method, where you can actually with the Sagny method make rosé and then make red wine after that. The direct press is strategically discarding those grapes afterwards because they know exactly how and what they're looking for in design, and it allows for cooler harvesting or it's usually created from cooler harvesting and cooler temperatures when fermenting to make that very iconic and well designed flavor and style. Let's see here. Uh, we also have Ismoved, primarily a blending grape. What characteristics does it bring to a blend? So, in general, Mourvedre actually has a very almost earthy, oxidized flavor. Whenever you get this meaty, gamey style, quite often you can get it from Syrah, but Syrah has more pepper, more cherry, whereas Mourvedre on its own almost is like a leathery, earthier tone to it. It's not overly spicy. It's very juicy, but it's bolder tannins, much bigger structure, and they only use a little bit of it. But sometimes, especially in California, you'll see single varietal Mourvedre being made, both in like Temecula, um, Santa Barbara, as well as Paso Robles. Let's see here. Spare ribs, dry rub, and Zinfandel. I like your style, Carol. I think that's a great pairing, especially knowing that you're using dry rub, so it adds that spice to really kind of not overly match with the pepperiness of the Zinfandel, but really a great quality blending. Now, again, when we're looking at your favorite blends can be tricky, right? Because sometimes we don't know exactly what that perfect blend is. For me, in particular, with blends, I like um, Grenache base, but I do love Mourvedre, heavy Mourvedre with Grenache, because Grenache, as a fruit of its own, adds a lot of fruity character, and it's a thinner skinned grape, so it can't be aged too long. So they add it to the blend, and it lightens it up. Also, you've probably heard me talk about Tempranillo and Grenache blends because that style adds this great quality when aged. That's also earthy, more complexity of this oak driven flavor and fruit character. That's just it's got a little bit of composition and everything, and it doesn't lose too much of the fruit. Let's see here. And Petit Syrah, which is related, but I would have to. It's kind of more popularized in California. We're going to see in style, it's a lot more peppery and usually grown like as its own varietal of wine. So sometimes you'll see wine regions blending with Cabernet, which can be very elegant in style because the Cabernet is adding a little bit more complexity. If that helps kind of explain that style there. But yeah, let's keep going here. So, in general, again, we've covered a lot of grapes, a lot of styles that you all are really covering. Um, in general, the most popular grapes, you're going to have Grenache, Syrah, Carignan, Cinsault, and Mourvedre. With the white wines, Viognier, Grenache Blanc, Claret, Rue Marsan, and Roussanne. And this kind of affects all the styles. And we talked a little bit about Northern Rhone, specializing in Syrah and blending a little bit with the Viognier Marsan Roussan, as well as in Southern Rhone. Look at how many grape varietals. There's actually like 22 grape varietals in this region, and it's famous for blending, and it allows for the winemaker to create all these different grapes, different wines, and then start doing their blends, their assemblage, so that way it allows for them to design the flavor and really guide the wines in terms of their own artistic expression. Because again, this is a combination of science as well as art, and really kind of the forefront of winemaking as an art. Kind of influence with like champagne, how they take that and they run with it and they turn it into a sparkling wine as well. All right, let's see here. So again, the beauty of red wine, right? And these blends, as well as the beauty of white wine and their blends. You don't have to pay too much attention, and you don't have to overthink them. It's beautiful to be able to explore these wines, but when you're buying something that is a blend, you'll have GSM blends, you have Bordeaux blends, but overall, they're blends to be enjoyed. To understand these regions and styles will give you a general idea of what the flavor should be. Whereas like Rhone blends will be peppery, leathery, earthy, as well as cherry, bright fruit, and usually a little bit more alcohol in the structure, whereas Bordeaux blends are a little cooler, need age because they can last a longer time, and they have huge tannins and that go for like 20 years, 30 years. Let's see here. Oh, you got good Petite Syrah. Yeah, absolutely. From those two wineries as well. Let's see here. What else? Good wines don't have to be expensive. Christy, I definitely agree. And this region is actually a great example of that, because a lot of these wines, especially in Southern Rhone and Provence, they average about $10, $15, no problem. And you get great quality winemaking with great concentration of flavor. Susan, you're asking what factors affect the flavor of the same type of wine growing in one location and country versus the other. So we talk about grape growing as an influence of terroir. It can be the soil, it can be the water, it can be the wind, it can be the vines and how you train the vines. It can be concentration. If they aren't concentrated, sometimes we look at vineyard spacing and how if the vines are grown closely together, they fight for the same resources. If they're spread out a little bit more, you're going to actually have more resources, more minerality and water being distributed, and basically the vines are able to grow bigger, but it dilutes the vines, dilutes the grapes a little bit. And so now they don't have to struggle as much. When there's more struggle for these vines, they can definitely create this great concentration of flavor. And so as we go back into this summertime French Riviera, let's also compare it to California, this design and summertime aesthetic, how they match in similarity in marketing and appeal. And again, we get into these two regions, and we're going to look at Paso Robles in particular, because they are famous for these Rhone Ranger wines, importing almost 22 of these varietals in this region and creating a group of people called the Rhone Rangers, kind of a play on the Lone Ranger, right? And it basically taking 3 years to 15 years at a time, importing these wines through regulated channels so that way they're allowed to replicate these Rhone blends and actually make their own style. Because again, going back to that question of what's really dictating the difference in style, California has different soil. We don't have galettes, but we have volcanic soil. We have rocky, like hardy style, but there's a lot of minerality, a lot of resources for these vines to actually soak into and basically influence the wine with more flavor, more concentration, hotter climates as well. And so these grapes become very ripe, very big wines. And so when we look at El Paso de Robles, we're looking at the region of the passage of the oaks, right? The pass of the oak is these oak trees kind of line the coast and protect it and actually create this warm in continental climate inside, and so it allows for great ripening. But it's also cooled by the Templeton Gap. It's just a little peak there that allows for some cooler grape varietals, but hotter the um, the more inland you go, the hotter the climate it gets, and it allows for other grape styles like Burgundy, where you go closer to the oak and the coast, you get a little bit more Burgundy, and warmer climate, you're getting these big Rhone blends. And again, but difference in style compared to Nice and Marseille, you're getting this small town feel, quaint, just like Healdsburg and Salta, where they're small towns and really tight knit communities, and great for kind of exploring. But at the same time, this kind of winemaking culture stems around food, right? And we talk about food and look at how do you pair with it. So again, give me some great recommendations that you like to do in terms of food pairing, what you like to eat during the summertime, and what makes you jazzed about summer food pairings. You know, what do you look for in terms of seafood or barbecue, and you name it. Well, what's your style and what do you like to drink it with? Susan, you're asking, let's see. Um, oh, yeah, we were talking about the different countries too. Another example of that is the soil, the terroir, because when you're the terroir in particular, you're also getting hillsides, sun exposure, more rain, less rain. More rain will create more concentration of the grapes. Less rain will create, or sorry, more rain will create more watered down grapes. Less rain will create that higher concentration of grape. And so it's more sugar, less water. More sugar will allow for more alcohol and allow for more concentration. But as we get into this style, that's a great example why Viognier has more viscosity and richness. A great example for like this seaside pairing is like bouillabaisse, or in the kind of the States, we would do like a clam boil versus like steamed clams and oysters, grilled shrimp, lobster, and squid. This is perfect for Viognier, which is a heavier white wine. It's still crisp and great minerality, but a little bit more body and structure. You also have camping and picnics, right? Which is give you a great opportunity to explore rosé and things like Provence ratatouille, or for us, it might be as easy as deviled eggs, charcuterie like cheese and meats, even like a salad niçoise. Um, you also have ceviche, which would be a little bit more popular the farther south you go, as well as fish tacos. Again, it's citrusy, it's refreshing, it's vibrant both for the ingredients of the food as well as the style of the wine. They blend together, they match in style and charisma. And let's see here. Everybody's going for it. Fiesta barbecue shrimp and Riesling. Oh, I like that. That's really good. Pasta salad, fruit salads, chicken kebabs, which chicken kebabs, I definitely do a beautiful Grenache. Whereas the pasta salads, I do maybe a more Viognier or Picpoul. Let's see, fruit salads for you. And let's see, cold sparkling wines. I like it. Sophia, Christina, Sarah, great ideas, great options there. And really gives us a chance to explore. So with barbecue, we look a little bit more at this different heartier style foods, right? You have Syrah, I recommend with like chicken, grilled meats, kebab type foods, as well as corn, vegetables on the barbecue would be great with Grenache because it's fruity, it's livelier, and it captures the smoky flavors without overwhelming it with tannins and heavier alcohol. Um, let's see here. Then I'm going to get into kind of that style there. Sunday brunch with Bellinis. Oh, actually, great idea. But also, Mary Lou, give us a pairing. What would you have for summertime Bellinis? What's kind of what you would have for brunch, in a sense, in terms of food? And Joan, you were talking about fish and Pinot Grigio. Excellent style. I'd actually do one where you almost have like a gentle cream sauce on the fish too. So that way the Pinot Grigio gives it some fruity liveliness and matches with the richness of the food and the sauce, right? And Shiraz, yeah, we're going down under here. And with Australia, they're really kind of the pioneers of this bold style wine, right? Powerful, edgy, earthy, and jammy, especially if they're concentrated. Notice with a little bit at the bottom there, you have their concentrated vines, right? Now they do trellising, but at the same time, they allow for their vines to actually um, also become like gnarled vines, and they allow for more intensity, more concentration of these grapes. And again, it differs in style because the Australians have also pioneered different technology. So they started using mechanical harvesting and allowed for expediting this flavor on a mass scale, allowed for a really unique style of approaching grape growing, and allowed for us all around the world to kind of explore GSM blends. Because again, you might not have had Grenache Syrah Mauvais from Rhone, right? Maybe not as popular, and that's why we're kind of introducing it. But at the same time, Australian wines are a lot more international, a lot more famous, and this is kind of why they're byproduct of the utilization of technology. And as we continue on, let's also remember the Mediterranean. We're looking at Languedoc, Roussillon, and as you continue farther west, you also have Priorat in Spain, which takes Grenache on its own and kind of makes it its own thing. No blending here. This is, I mean, it can, but for the most part, they're looking at the beauty and the quality of Grenache or Garnacha in this region and really looking at how to concentrate it. But look at the vineyards here and look at the idea of how they're growing their vines. Does it look familiar? It's actually very similar to the Rhone, how it winds around the hillsides and it allows for the grapes to grow alongside the terroir. So that way, each vine is independent and growing in structure. But again, we're talking a lot of red wines here, and this isn't far-fetched. Red wine's very popular for summertime, just as much as rosé, because you'll have Garnacha rosé out in Spain, kind of growing both, making both styles at the same time, and then also making sparkling wine with it. You'll also see a little bit of cava using these grapes and making sparkling wine from Grenache. Let's see here. So um, yeah, it looks like everybody's getting outdoor ideas and food pairings and delicious beverages. Let's see, Sauvignon Blancs from New Zealand are also excellent. Definitely agree. Both North and South Island. I love it. I love it. Especially as you go farther north, it gets a little warmer in style. So you start to see Chardonnay, Viognier blends in that area, a little bit more richer wine, richer body white wine coming out of New Zealand as you get warmer. And then Sunday brunch Bellini with frittata and fresh fruit. I love it. I love it. Great ideas. And so we kind of look at, wrap it up in terms of influence regionally around the world. We look at US and how it's affected Paso Robles, like we were talking about, as well as different regions of California, like Sonoma, San Juan, Keene, as well as Walla Walla and Columbia Valley in Washington, which grow cooler style, and they go back to the Rhone concentration and boldness, cold climate. Cooler climate than Paso. But then Australia, you'll have different regions like Riverland, Barossa Valley, as well as Riverina and McLarendale, and Spain, Italy, and South Africa, also great regions. Joni, you're asking a favorite wine region. I definitely love Priorat and Rioja in Spain. Stellenbosch is actually one region I love to see their blends because they will blend Rhone and Bordeaux. They're taking the styles almost like Australia, where they'll take cab and blend it with Syrah and see how bold the wine can go and concentrated the fruit. They're very hearty wines, but then they can tone it down a little bit and make these Grenache-driven wines that are fruit-driven, less tan and less alcohol, very delicate, very interesting in terms of complexity using the same blends. And let's see. I get everybody's question. I think so, but please let me know. We got a lot of questions today. I love the feedback, and I'd love to know what food pairings you might have on your mind that you'd love to pair with these styles of wine. Because again, we might not see, you know, single varietal Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre, or Viognier, Marsan, Roussan. But I love to know what you are accustomed to eating and what you would like to pair it with. So let's see. We have haven't tried peaches yet, but it sounds great. Uh, Grilled peaches. I love that idea. And actually, grilled peaches would go great with Grenache because that fresh fruit driven character, but a little bit of like a smokier flavor, as well as taking Grenache where it's juicy, it's almost, not jammy, but very lively, fruit driven, and really capturing kind of the essence of the grilled peach without contradicting the smokiness that you're adding by barbecuing it. Let's see, wonderful change to have fruit as a side with vegetables. Sophia, I like it. And then Stellenbosch. Stellenbosch is in South Africa. And so one of the big regions out in that area. They are famous for Shiraz before it was called Shiraz, right? There's a little bit of history and theory where the Normans actually brought Syrah, and as they were traveling through Middle East and Africa, eventually by the time they had gotten down to South Africa, they had renamed the grape of Syrah as Shiraz. And so the idea then, when they brought it over to Australia, that name continued as Shiraz. In theory, it was because they had gone through a town called Shiraz and renamed the grape at that style or in that name. And let's see what else we have. Palisade peaches and pair it with wines from the Western slopes. Love it, love it. Let's see what else. We have Graham Beck sparkling wine. Oh, that's excellent. Yeah, so you're drinking some South African variations on this. And then where else? Colorado peaches come to Oklahoma. I like it. I like it. You know what? And everybody's been mentioning fresh fruit and veggies, and this is a great opportunity for the Picpoul de Panay to be on the citrusy side. Marsan Roussan is actually a great option. That we describe it sometimes as almost like a earthier white wine. It can be almost like wool-like in style. A little bit more oxidation, a little bit more minerality, and really just more less body than Viognier, but it's definitely more concentrated than your Picpoul and more than your Sauvignon Blancs. Let's see here. We'll wrap up here with Christina. What wine and champagne would pair with afternoon tea, sandwiches, and cakes? Well, in general, like if we're going with a heavier, let's say light sandwiches, kind of like a little table spread, I'd actually go with something like if it's sparkling, I'd actually do something like cava. You could also do a beautiful prosecco from Italy, like Conegliano, Valdobbiadene. You'll see those regions kind of a sub-appellation of prosecco. Can great complexity, but at the same time, you're not tasting it with really complex flavors. They're going to be fruit driven. They're going to be easier to have with like a table spread of tea and sandwiches, and also easy to blend, right? Like we were talking with mimosas and different like bellinis, gives you the option to do both style of sparkling wine pairings, if you will. And then you can also have it as a side, right? You'll have your peach puree, peaches, as well as sparkling, and kind of it makes its own meal, it makes its own dish. And then dessert wines can be tasty in summer, hanging out on the deck after dinner wines. I definitely agree. In this region, you'll see Rosto. You'll also see different dessert wines like Baume de Vanille, and what's the other one that's really popular? But they're very concentrated red wines, almost like port, a little bit of herbaceous, but actually a different style of Vin de Natural concentrated or fortified wines coming from these regions. And yeah, I want to thank you all. I think that was a lot to go over, but everybody had some fantastic input, great ideas. I love the pairings. I love everybody's input. We got cucumber cream cheese sandwiches uh, for summertime. I like that. That's definitely something where sparkling wine would be fantastic. A rosé would be beautiful with that. Something crisp, refreshing, and lively, as well as let's see, Grues from New Mexico is a very nice and affordable style. Definitely agree. You also see some beautiful California sparkling. Paso Robles, you'll see even, what is it? Santa Barbara, where they're a little cooler climate, makes some beautiful sparkling wines in that region too. I love it. I love it. And thank you all. And also, please, let's thank our host, AARP Colorado. Really appreciate them hosting us and making this happen, making us be able to enjoy both red wine, white wine, tastings, pairings, a little bit of history, a little bit of architecture, right? And really, thank you all for attending because without you guys, couldn't happen. And I love the enthusiasm today because we had covered so much and there's so many ideas, and I really, really appreciate it. Again, thank you all for coming today. I really appreciate it. You have a wonderful night.